the idea is that before anyone else is paid, you pay yourself.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast.
Minisode.
Welcome back to the program, everyone. Dustin Harris hanging out once again with you in the podcast chair. Welcome back to this minisode series called The Principles of Prosperity. I spent last week explaining to you what the principles of prosperity are in general. If you have not listened to that, I highly recommend. These other ones, as we lay them out, do not go in any particular order. They are as written in front of me, but you literally could flip-flop or change around the order, and it would make zero difference because these are not progressive. These are not chronological. These are simply principles that, if lived, will bless your lives. Now, many of them are dependent on others, meaning if you lived number 4, but you didn't live number 3, by the way, number 4 is money follows value. Number 3 is money is only a tool. If you don't understand that money is a tool, you don't understand what value means. You don't understand what that marker of money or currency means. And so many of them are dependent on one another, but many of them are standalone. Right? Many of those, if you, for example, number 6, success is accelerated when you surround yourself with others. Folks, that is a principle of truth no matter whether you live the other 15 or not. Right? So my point is you definitely need to listen to the introduction. The rest of these, feel free to skip around and listen to the ones that you care most about or want to understand. So maybe some of these you look at and you go, I get it. I live that principle. I understand it. I don't really need to listen to a mini-sode on that. Okay? That being said, let's dive in to number 1. Number 1, principle of prosperity, pay yourself first. Now, folks, many of these can be called by different names, right? When I call this the principle of pay yourself first, it could be called the principle of savings, right? It could be the principle of the rainy day, right? There's many titles that this could employ. The title doesn't matter. Title it whatever you want to remember it, but the idea is that before anyone else is paid, you pay yourself. Now, where did this principle come from? Well, folks, you'll find that throughout this series, these principles that I'm going to lay out for you, I really can't reference. And it's because, not that I don't want to give credit to the individual that taught me these principles, but more likely it was individuals, plural, that taught this through books and podcasts and courses and study here and study there and reading between the lines and putting pieces together. In other words, what you'll find with truth is truth, and truth can be found in many different ways. You can find it through religion. You can find it through corporations. You can find it through listening to wise people. You can find it through sitting alone, contemplating the universe. There's many ways to discover truth, and a lot of times, frankly, I don't know where the truth came from. So my apologies to these individuals that taught me this truth, that I'm not giving you credit where credit is due, but the idea is I can't really point to one source. Now, on principle number 1, I can point to a source where it probably really got hammered home for me. And that source was called a book called The Richest Man in Babylon. Clausen is the last name. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful book. Please pick it up. It's short. It's like 120 pages, maybe. It's short. It's a very readable book. It's written in a narrative style. It's a story about a man trying to seek his fortune and the principles that he learns along the way. I want to pause here and remind you of a great company that's allowing you to do more. It's technology, folks, that helps you to stay in touch with your business, that helps you to stay in touch with all of those thousands of orders that are coming your direction. One of the great things about ANOW software is you can keep track of bids. Now, what does that mean? That means when someone calls and says, hey, I need you to do an appraisal at 123 Any Street, and you quote them $450 in a turn time of 2 weeks, you can take note of that in the software. What does that do? Well, when they call back and they give it to you for $375, you'll say, remember I quoted $400. How many times have you had AMCs try this trick on you where they call and make a quote, and then a day later or 2 days later, they send it to you at less than when you quoted, hoping you don't take notice? Well, that doesn't happen with ANOW software. Not only that, but you can keep track of which orders you're getting, which ones you're not. You can keep track of your ratios. Are you collecting 50% of the orders that you bid on, 25%, 75%? Where are you? And what does that mean for your business? Folks, it's ANOW software, ANOW.com, and right now you can save 30% for 3 months using the coupon code podcast30. Welcome back to the program, everybody. Short little mini-sode for you today as we start this series called The Principles of Prosperity. My goal is to, on piggybacking on last week, which was the introduction to the Principles of Prosperity, to lay out over the next several weeks the principles that guide me and help me to find success. These are principles of truth. These are principles that work. Number one is to pay yourself first. Now, I first really had this principle hammered home as I read one of my favorite books called The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clausen. Great, I would say fundamental book that every business owner should read, every person should read, really. These are principles that can guide your life and that are truth. Folks, living these principles will bless your life, and one of them is to pay yourself first. Well, Dustin, what if I'm in debt? What if you're telling me I should pay myself first before I pay my mortgage? Yes, I am. And folks, I know that's hard, and I know there's times that I've struggled with this, but in general, the very first thing I do when I get a paycheck is I take 10% of that paycheck and I transfer it, actually not just to another account, but I actually transfer it to another bank. I have a whole other bank that's really hard to get money out of, but really easy to put money into. So it makes it really easy for someone like me who is tempted by that 10%. But I take that 10% and I put it in a bank account, and it is that 10% that I utilize for not just savings, but for investments. When I see a great stock and I've studied it out and I feel like that could bless my life, that's where the money comes from. When as I did this last year, pick up a couple of Airbnb investment properties, real estate properties, the money came from that fund. Pay yourself first before anything else. It's so hard. You've got all these bills that are looming. You know that if you don't pay your mortgage, you're going to have a problem. You know that if you don't buy groceries, you're going to have a problem. But folks, trust me when I tell you that the other 80%, and I know that doesn't make sense with the math, but stay tuned for next week and it'll make more sense. The 80% that you have left over after the first two things that you pay will be enough. There's another principle, and it's not an official principle of prosperity, but it is kind of a principle of prosperity in that it actually is. We're going to talk about the principle of the Parkinson's law, okay? And this fits in this, that we expand our spending based on the money that we have. Think about it. If you don't take that money out up front, chances are you're going to spend it. Take it out up front, and all of a sudden, your bills, your output fits what you have left. That's principle number one. Pay yourself first. Stay tuned, folks. Next week, we're going to go to principle number two. We're going to build on these, and at the end of this series, you're going to have the whole principles of prosperity at your fingertips.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.
Not that I don't want to give credit to the individual that taught me these principles, but more likely Sorry, editor. But more likely one more time.